I've been smoking so long now. Just don't feel that shortness of breath these days. Interesting. Definitely one for the books. So, thinking a lot yesterday about confusion, the way I defined the field. So to me, the field, I'm gonna call it the field. That's history. You know, that's environment or the appearances of the everyday world. That's part of the field. Like, if I were to tell you there's no such thing as squirrels, and then you're seeing squirrels every day, well, you kind of know I'm full of bullshit. There's squirrels. I've seen them. You know, they like to hide their nuts. Don't know why. And gather nuts, and then they have them. Yeah, I've seen squirrels. Other things I haven't seen, but that happens. I like to stay away from those things that, generally speaking, unless a person has a very high internal visual field, they're not actually going to see. Due to the confusion, they're not even going to understand that it's just really hyper-focused visual image. They're going to assume it's something else. But you know, that happens. It's life. So, God, no God. This belief. Personally, I don't care less what you want to call it, it's reality. Reality. If you look at reality and call it God, well then, to you, it's something that, you know, gives us a basis, I'm guessing. You know, it's at the core or whatever. Because that's mostly what I'm hearing from y'all, is that it's at your core. Okay, that's cool, that's fine. Just let's not forget that if it's at your core, it's also on the outside. And maybe the outside world is actually the Bible. Something that you can't encapsulate with one book. You know? You can't encapsulate all of this with one book. Like, you can study it and create books from that study. Yes? But you cannot encapsulate it at all, period, ever. With any book, any image, any sound, any smell, any taste, any feeling. You can't capture this that way. Okay? That's what people were confused about. Okay? But you know, a long time ago, people needed power. You know, I read y'all histories over in the old world as you came to the new world. Started in Africa. Over there, consolidated first. The old ways were forgotten. And pharaohs arose and shit. You know, people were like godmen. God women, you know. Nepotism occurred. You know? These god men and these god women started fucking up. The people revolted, wanting to steal the power of the pharaohs. They created a book. It enslaved them and everyone who has read or altered that book since. Because they didn't understand what it actually was originally. That shit gets forgotten over time. Lucky for y'all, you know, y'all spread out over time. You know, y'all spread out over time. Y'all came to the Americas. And that created a kind of cleft in space-time. Because while you were settling in the old world and fighting all your wars, these motherfuckers were still trying to travel up here before they got here. Then they're probably there for like about 20, 30,000 years, because you gotta expect them 20, 30,000 years on your side. Shit was happening, man. Lots of shit was happening. Y'all might only have the last 10,000 years. There was shit going on way before that. So, back to this side of the globe. These motherfuckers are finally getting here. You know, they're starting to settle, but they're going to take a long ass time to catch up to you, man. The fucking Trek alone probably took them like 50,000 years and shit to get all the way the fuck to the other side of the globe and shit. You know? So they're going to take a while to catch up to y'all. So they're at the original stages, where first they have to come up with the core values of how to be. How would you say? I was saying, because you an enlightened being. You know, they were just starting at the core. They didn't have like a whole book around it. So for them, it was just, you know, an eye-to-eye thing, or a sound-to-sound thing, or a, you know, emotional to emotional thing. Then, you know, inevitably, you know, they did come up with language. You know, well, they had a language before that, but inevitably their language began to describe their environment, is what I mean to say. They created a story. So eventually you have to create a story. Because, okay, here you are, you're at your core, you're living your life, but, you know, the world's kind of fucked up. There's animals, there's all kinds of shit trying to kill you, blah, blah, blah. So you find all this shit off, and as you're doing all these things, you're learning about life, and what you need to survive, and this and that. You know, so these becomes the advice of the primitive human. They create an advice, kind of like a philosophy book, but it's based off their story. And their story always has at its core childhood. You know, mother, father, childhood. So you're born, you know, the beginning of everything is always, you know, you're born, you know, and these things come and they help you, you know, come into the world and shit. Maybe that's your parents, you know, that's, so when you get down to it, you know, you get down to that core, you really remember all of it. That's how it's gonna look in a way, you know. It's like, they were holy people and it was all love. And like for me, you know, my parents split up pretty early, so I get to see that love fracture early in my life. And it was a oneness, and then it took a separation, and that was like the first time a separation occurred in my life, was when they got divorced. Because then I differentiated between Papa and Mama. They helped me to differentiate. It's gonna happen sooner or later. It just happened for me way early. That's all. You know. They don't have to split up, is what I'm saying. You're gonna the baby's mind is sooner or later gonna differentiate between the fact that there's father and mother. They're not really the same being. You know, they're not as united as you would think. But, you know, so they create these stories that are navigating a person's life through these things. The first part is always the core. You know, the second part becomes the power. Now, what's the power realms about? Well, here you're going to learn about how to, like, move your body in certain ways so that you can get the objective done with your axes, your hunting, and things like that. You're learning how to talk to people in a way that gets them to agree with you or disagree with you without causing conflict. So this is the power realms. This is where you're learning that stuff. So then, you know, the advice, you know, stops being about the core stuff, because, you know, you should have learned that when you were a kid. Your parents should have been able to give you a lot of love and a lot of honesty, and they should have been weaving the story for you already. You know, by the time you get into the power realms, you're like 10 or something. You know, that's when you get into the power realms. But up all the way up until that point, you know, your parents are like teaching you, and they're helping you, and they're getting you ready. You know, like, you know, they give you the basic toolkits and shit. You're getting into the power realms. Okay, now you're learning how to do shit. You know how to do shit. You know, so power realms would include any kind of job you're talking about, psychotherapy, be a psychotherapy, carpentry, whatever. You know what I'm saying? That's power realm. At the same time, you know, social wit, things like that. That also deals with the power realms. At the same time, you know, things like, you know, so it's really just about, you know, who you are, how you interact with your environment. That's the power realms. Okay. Now, as time passes, you know, a lot of people are going to get stuck in the power realms because that's really where most people need to be anyway. But there's a third stage. And that's when you're hitting into the surface level area. Now, this actually is more an area for scientists. Okay? That's the surface level stage. That's where we're learning how to create symbols and how to define them, explain them, so that new things can arise. So let's say we got the medicine woman. She knows her routine. She's doing her routine. Well, we got a bunch of men over here who've been testing all these drugs and shit. Half of them died, half of them lived, and the half that lived reported in. And they figured something out, and then boom, they give it to the medicine woman. Now she has a new tool in her toolkit. That she can use to help people with. So that's when you get to that third stage. That's that bigger picture thinking type thing. That's a scientist thing, man. Otherwise, you're good at the 1 and 2. Number 3 is a bitch. Learning to deal with that surface level shit and adequately filtering it back into the story. That's an art form. Well, that's how it used to go on back and then. So, so here you are. You guys have forgotten all this shit. You've been through all your wars, blah, 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 blah. And you'll come over. Boom. You'll hit America and shit. And obviously you keep going with the wars, blah, 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 blah. But the cool thing is, now we exist in an age, in the age of, like, a lot of people say, oh, kids got it bad, kids this, kids that. Man, I'm never like that. Ever. For me, wanna know what? Kids have never had it better. This is the internet age. Back then, money controlled the media. Money controlled everything. Nowadays, it still kind of does. I mean, it's kind of hard to stop that. But we have the internet. We can spread information at very fast speeds now. Now, what used to be like, that's what people don't see about history. We used to not have books. So first we used to have to tell our stories. The storyteller had to be very good at memorization. Spends his entire life learning how to memorize shit before he picks up the story from the one before. Now he memorizes it perfectly on the dot when he gets it. That's a lost art, though. I learned how to do it as a kid, though. I did try that shit out. It does work. Your memory's just like, and for me, it's still on function, but it's not as good as, I can tell, it's not as good as it was when I was a kid. When I was a kid, I could just like photographic memory that shit. Now it's like, it just comes out as impulses. Anyway. Which again shows that it's a habit, it's cultivatable, and it degrades over time. I love when I can see that happening. It always clicks for me. Alright. But kids have never had it better. I know motherfuckers are going nuts because they don't like the ADHD thing. I'm like, dude, I don't think y'all even understand what's going on here. So, what's the problem with kids nowadays? Alright, here it is. The parents are fucking confused. The role models are confused. The entire world is confused. They're probably the first generation that is capable of actually noticing there's something seriously fucking wrong here. Because previous generations couldn't do that. They were always looking up to their parents and going, we want to be just like you. I get the impression nowadays kids are growing up and going, dude, I don't want to be nothing like you. And that's a good place to be. I don't know if we're fully there yet. Maybe they're just starting to peek their heads out right now. But they're starting to notice. They don't want to be. They want to be. They want to be more honest. They want to be able to connect with each other. And you can't do that if you base everything off lies. You just can't. Because you'll have a few people who believe in it. But the rest of them will just go with the flow because they don't want to cause a problem, a conflict. And the problem with these motherfuckers that do believe is that they really traditional, conservative, keep shit old school. They don't like the new. They hate the new. Me, I love the new. I'm all about change, baby. Change. It's supposed to be change. Or more like, and then it gets like bigger and then bigger and then bigger, like a fucking Big Bang vortex type thing. I like that. Chaining that shit back, holding it back, that's no good. So parents got to be more honest, and it's hard to be honest when you don't even know yourself. Get to know yourself, you might have to meditate. There are many different ways to get to know yourself. You know, you can do self-inquiry, you can meditate, do yoga, you can just get to know yourself. Also, on that note, those of you who find you may not have much percolating up to the top, this may be an issue of language utilization. So you might have to learn more different ways of looking at the world. Usually one of the easiest ways is to pick up more than one book. You know? Or, you know, pick up a bunch of literature or fiction. Try learning from that. You know, and then as these, what I love about the TV is, you know, it presents what it's showing with pictures as well as words. So not only can it replace the internal talk, you know, it can place the imagery. What it is that you're looking at. What it is that you're looking for. You know, you're looking for characteristics like, you know, honesty, courage, you know, the virtues. You know, to hear it, to see it, to embody it. So why would you want to embody it? Well, it helps fix your worldview. So it becomes more and more honest, and you're less and less likely to fall for mirages and illusions. And this way of life will then bring us in accord with the field, the actual field, and not the field we imagine is the field. Which, you know, still bothers me that y'all can get here and then not be like, hey, y'all stuck in a bubble? And then just go, pop bubble. I bubble. Yeah, I know, it always takes time. You know, you give them time, you give them time, you give them time. I don't really usually have to give them much time. Then again, I pronounce myself as an atheist off the bat, so. Well, you can't be confused about what's about to come out of my mouth. But know who you're doing it with, that's all. But seriously, you open up a dojo and they're coming to seek advice from you? Perfect movement, maybe? I don't know. Now, out on the streets, yeah, I could understand. You opened up a dojo and kept your mouth shut? Now, that's weird. I mean, they did come to you. For truth. Because they were confused. And they were looking for the field. Because they knew it was missing. And I really chose that time to bring them right the fuck back into confusion. Man. Not sure we see things the same way. Then again, I could be confused. And all of this actually is an illusion. And my ego is reality. Yeah, that'll fly. See how far you get with that shit.